The Association of Potters South Africa, I think they changed their name to Ceramic South Africa, had their 25th anniversary. It was in 1998. And I was invited as an award winner to partake in the show. We entered this piece into the show, and once again you can tell that we were struggling with the photo quality. I was doing a class with a guy by the name of Ralph Johnston in Cape Town in 1998, and the theme was architectural design. He made us draw the whole piece out on paper, and then we had to design it. It's basically a box made out of slabs with a wheel-thrown enclosed bowl right there. Inside this, the pot, an extension of the bowl is a long cylinder piece. If I have to redo this piece today, I would make that gallery a little bit more defined. I think if one would take it, it will maybe slip and slide a little bit around there. But that's as much as I can tell about this piece. It's one of the few pieces that came with me to the United States. I made these ones in my own studio, still inspired by the architectural design, but also if you look, if you're familiar with the African ethnic designs, you'll see there's a good bit of ethnicity coming out of it, and those are little sprigs that I got on the piece. Even that is a little sprig. I was still falling around with whether I'm making stoneware, porcelain, or earthenware work. This, by the way, was a earthenware clay body that I mixed up myself. And this was the first one that I've won an award with here in the United States. That happened, I think, in early 1999. I was very pleased with the, well, for one, the shape of the bottle became a little better. I think I became more aware of the way that I was shaping my pieces. But the colors on there was very different from my South African pit-fired pieces. At the time, once again, I have to apologize, the photography wasn't that good, and unfortunately this is the only one picture that I have of this piece. Still glad that I do have something to show from that. I started teaching my students here in my studio about press molds, and I did that myself. This is a press molded piece that's been put together from two sides with a wheel thrown spout and a wheel thrown bottom. The elephants on there is very, very much referring back to my South African heritage, and they were made from sprigs. I was still grieving about my own country, so we oftentimes I would think and talk about South Africa, and it came out naturally in my work where I was referring and commenting on my heritage. When I look at this piece, it is very busy, way too busy for what I want for it to be. You can barely see the little elephant. Once again, the a sprig that's sitting right there in the bowl on this piece. But I won my first international recognition with this piece. So I'm glad that I had the picture. You can see our imagery start getting better. And there we have a little pinch bowl. I cannot wait for this class to get to the place where we're going to start making pinch bowls. Many people think that pinch bowls are beginner's work. I think it's just a good place to begin, and it's a perfect medium for porcelain. This is one of the forms that I love to make. It's a wide-rimmed bowl, and it was made from porcelain. You can tell the clay is still very thick over there. Had no reason to make it extremely thin. The thickness probably helped it a little bit to stay stronger. But the design that I have on there was referring very, very strongly to my heritage in South Africa. There's the little giraffes, and you can tell the rhythm of Africa is going all over the piece. With this piece, I was still very confused. I was in a transition period where I wanted to do high fire work again. After the pit fire work, I started getting tired of the busyness that I sometimes found on the pit fired work. And I was still kind of falling around between earthenware, well, not so much earthenware anymore, but definitely stoneware and porcelain. And this one is a stoneware piece. It was basically a flat slab that I threw on the wheel, and I just folded it over, added a little top right there, and have this little lid that I popped into it. I mixed my own porcelain bodies at the time. This was not a translucent one, but it was fired to a cone 10, and it was one of the early envelopes that I created, where I started making it open to become an open envelope bowl type thing. You can tell that the foot underneath it, which was thrown on the wheel, is way too small for the rest of the piece. I still love this piece though, but there's many design flaws on this one. Here is the first signs of my dancing pots. White rimmed bowl with people moving on there. You can tell the foot is a little bit lifted up. Full porcelain work. If you look close by, you'll see the work becomes a little thinner. I enjoyed the period that I was in here, but it was an exploration phase in which I think I had the dancing pots in the rear of my mind, but it didn't come out fully at the time yet. This envelope, when you look at the foot, you can tell the balance becomes a little better there. It's full porcelain. You can tell the movement is busy developing. Everything started going into where I previously made some rigid movement, referring back to my own country. The movement becomes a little bit more loose, referring to leaves and people's personalities and things like that. I'm glad that I've got this picture because it's a great one to show the direction that I was going into. My first little porcelain teapot. I've made many teapots before, but I was very proud of this one, and there's a few that came in at this, in the same series. This body part here was press molded. You can tell that I was in a time period where I did a lot of press molding, exploring a lot about what I can do to get to the next phase in my studio. The little textures that you see there is typical from porcelain, and it's got the basis of this piece is wheel thrown. Of course, the spout is wheel thrown and the top is wheel thrown with a pulled handle. I'm so glad that I still got this picture. The piece itself is long time gone, but it shows a very, very important phase in my studio life. In a little bit from now, I'm going to show you this actual piece. It's made from a porcelain clay body that I mixed up myself, and it was entered into a show. I think it was the first show that I partaked in, that was at NCECA, the National Conference for Ceramic Artists here in the United States. And I was so proud that I had this one actually published on a poster. It's a little translucent. The picture is not translucent, but I will show you some of its translucency in a little bit. In this one, you can once again see how the movement in my work start coming out. I'm still exploring. I'm still trying to find my way. This is a cut and paste area there. And this piece was at one stage, I think it was in the Ceramic Monthly. It was used in a commercial. Loved it. Wish I can hold it in my hands again. Southern ice. I was very, very, very strong on my way with Southern ice. The piece is still very rigid, but I was learning the clay medium at the time. I was trying to understand what I was working with. And you can also see Koos's imagery on here became much better. He went to school, did a class. Between the two of us, we were going back and forth at the time about who's doing the bad work, me making bad pots or he was making bad photography, what kept me out of shows. But here's a good piece that went along with the first article that I had published in a national magazine here in the United States, and it was all about porcelain. Another Southern ice piece. Much, much better. And I love this piece because it was probably one of the very first ones that really showed the direction that I was going in. I think its name was something like Dancing in the Wind or something like that. You can tell the whole dancing theme became upfront. And when I talk about dancing theme, it's got all to do with movement. You'll hear me talk a lot about movement and touching and reaching out as we go along in this class. I love this piece. Along with the previous one, this one was also published in one of the magazines. I cannot recall exactly which one it was, but you can tell that I'm getting a little bit more confident with the Southern ice. The piece started having a little bit of attitude, and look how nicely I start succeeding in letting the foot balance with the rest of the piece. We lived in Illinois for about 6 years. It's a very, very snowy area. Up in Chicago, windy city, very cold. And I was inspired by the ice that you had, or the snow that was falling for a great part of the year, sometimes from September up to April, if it's the extreme time. So I created these bases to comment on the snow there, and I will eventually show this in one of my articles, show people how to do that. Here's another one of my ice pieces, a little bit of attitude. I'm getting a little bit more confident with the Southern ice, and I start knowing more and more about the medium. So I started giving it a little bit of attitude. I love this piece. That part over there is intentionally made like this. Moving, pushing the clay further, pushing the limits further, and it did not by accident fall like this. Many times in porcelain, you put something in the kiln, and when it comes out, it does something totally different from what you wanted for it to do. But in this case, I created this piece, and I use this many times when I want to get into some important shows. Another envelope. Push the limits a little bit in a different direction to create these little holes in there. I love the movement. It's not too much, but along with the busyness of this part right here, it's just enough. And I love the big foot rim that I have underneath this. And people, this concludes the slideshow.